The devil's diet, your loneliness. The devil, feeds on our loneliness. When we feel alone, maybe we are actually alone. You see, when we are alone, we can so often engage, not always, but often engage in, to one degree or another, self-pity. And that's not what we should, as Christians, be doing. But it's what the devil wants us to do, to engage in this self-pity because we're alone. We've got no one to talk to, maybe at some point or another. We are made to be gregarious creatures, people. We are made to interact with one another. Communication is key. Now, I know sometimes through circumstances, through one reason or another, maybe it's not possible to have this fellowship. Yeah, that does happen. But the general principle is that we are to meet with other people, have fellowship with other people, engage with other people, because we have a lot to offer other people as Christians. Perhaps, let me rephrase that. Actually, our God has a lot, so much to offer others. His resources are infinite. And through us interacting with other people, he is able to do that. Now, let's have a look at some scripture, because we must. I came across a particular verse in Psalm 27 the other day, last week I think it was. And, well, Psalm 27 verses 9 and 10. Psalm 27 verses 9 and 10. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help. Do not abandon me nor forsake me, O God of my salvation, for my father and my mother have forsaken me. But the Lord will take me up, or the Lord will care for me, another translation says. So even though in this particular instance, in this example, it says here that my father and my mother have forsaken me for one reason or another, or whoever it may be that has forsaken you, friends, family, the Lord will take me up. It says there in verse 10 of Psalm 27, the Lord will take care of me. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to leave you in a state of loneliness, because when we are lonely, that's when we are vulnerable, and the devil will come and feed on our loneliness. Hence the title of this video message. Let's have a look at another scripture. I'm finding it here to turn over the pages in my Bible. Quite a well-known scripture in Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10 and verses 23, 24, 25. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23 onwards. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. We mustn't forsake the assembling together. It's a physical assembling together, which is better than on YouTube. It's better than on Zoom. It actually means here in the Greek the episynagoge, excuse the pronunciation, means a physical, literal gathering together, face to face, not by means of some social media platform, as good as they are, but it means meeting in fellowship to encourage one another, etc. The analogy that I'm now going to mention has been used many, many times in talking about fellowship, about Christians meeting together, being in unity. The analogy being that of an open fire. A fire, you don't get many of these days because we have central heating, and coal fires are not very common. But where you have an open fire with coal on it, lumps of coal, pieces of coal, when they are together, they feed off each other, the coal, and there is a glow, there is a heat given off. But if one takes out of the fire one piece of coal and places it on the hearth, places it to one side on its own, it will cool down. It will begin to lose its heat because it's on its own. It's not with the other lumps of coal which help it to keep warm and serve its purpose. That analogy has been used many times. It's a good analogy. We need to be together with other Christians to avoid loneliness, and this loneliness, which can lead to self-pity, it can lead to thoughts of desperation, it can lead to thoughts of depression, etc. No one to help. That is part of the devil's diet. He feeds on such a state of affairs. Let me go to another scripture in 2 Timothy chapter 4, and I'm going to read from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 14 to 17. Alexander the coppersmith did me much harm. The Lord will repay him according to his deeds. Be on guard against him yourself, for he vigorously opposed our teaching. At my first defense, no one supported me, but all deserted me. May it not be counted against them. But the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, in order that through me the proclamation might be fully accomplished, and that all the Gentiles might hear, and I was delivered out of the lion's mouth. The idea is, as I mentioned, from the episunagoge in Hebrews 10, verse 25, that it's a physical, literal getting together in order to avoid loneliness, in order to avoid becoming cool, getting cold, that sort of thing. Another reason why loneliness is so bad and dangerous is that loneliness remembers what happiness forgets. Let me repeat that. Loneliness remembers what happiness forgets. When we're lonely, we tend to remember things that we shouldn't be remembering. Bad things. The devil feeds on our minds, plays on our minds, and we can engage in and develop all sorts of negative thoughts. So meeting together is essential. But as I've mentioned already, sometimes this is not possible because of, for one reason or another, to meet. I won't give any examples because they probably are many. So a person, a Christian, can sometimes be on his or her own. Not possible to meet physically. Well, this is where I refer to this passage in 2 Timothy chapter 4, where Paul is saying, at my first defense, no one supported me, all deserted me. He was on his own. Well, he was on his own, bereft of human company. He was on his own without any person, without any human being with him. But, in verse 17, the Lord stood with him. Great. It may be through circumstances that you are on your own sometimes, but the Lord stands with you. He comes alongside you. He is there. And as Paul says here in verse 17, the Lord stood with me and strengthened me. in order that, so that, and there was a result, an end result, success in the Lord, standing with Paul, strengthening Paul in order to achieve the result. So you may be on your own sometimes, you may feel you are on your own, but of course, as a born-again Christian, you are not. As a Christian, born again of the Spirit of God, you have him, the Spirit of God, dwelling in you. So it might be that you are physically on your own as a person with no other people around you, but the person of God is with you. He is in you, and he wants the best for you. He wants to stand with you. He is standing with you, and he wants to strengthen you and encourage you. So there we are, a relatively short message today about the devil, our adversary, the enemy, the wicked one, the evil one, the one who wants to cause destruction in our lives, the one who wants to neutralize our effectiveness. If we are lonely, he has something on which to feed. That loneliness is part of the devil's diet. So, the name of the game, the aim is to physically meet with people. That's essential. That is scriptural. That is what we should be doing, to encourage one another, to be like the coals in the fire, to support one another and feed off one another. But if that's not possible, then all is not lost, because we may feel lonely, but in fact we are not on our own, because the Lord, through his Spirit, is with us. He is actually indwelling us. I hope that helps to understand that loneliness, well, it's to be avoided. We must meet with people, but if not, well, even so, the Lord is so good and gracious that by his Spirit living in us, he who is in us is greater than he who is in the world. Let me repeat that a bit more slowly. He, the Spirit of God, who is in us is greater than he, the devil, who is in the world. So really and truly, whether we are with other people in a group, other Christians, or whether we are literally on our own, we are not absolutely on our own, and we are not lonely, because we have the Lord to be with us and to strengthen us.